Tonight on The Wrap, Labour's potential leadership race breaks the ice on a topic the party has long avoided revisiting. Wes Streeting brings Brexit back to the table, leaving Labour divided.
If rejoining the EU is the answer, then essentially what we're saying to people is life was fine in 2015.
While Andy Burnham begins his pivot back to Parliament, out campaigning for the by-election in Makerfield. Also tonight, an Ebola outbreak in Central Africa is declared a public health emergency by the World Health Organization. And Donald Trump issues a fresh warning to Iran as the UAE condemns a drone that struck a nuclear power station. In sport, England's Red Roses beat France to claim an 8th consecutive Women's Six Nations title. We discuss the day's biggest stories with Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator, James Heal, and journalist and author Rachel Shabby. Plus, the first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including the Financial Times, which says Andy Burnham is talking down any EU return. Good evening, welcome to you both. Now, for several years, Labour has trodden very carefully around the B word, Brexit. But Wes Streeting's pitch to rejoin the EU as part of his bid for the Labour leadership has brought the issue firmly back to the table. Speaking to Sky News, the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, criticised the former Health Secretary for reopening the divisive debate. So what did you guys make of Wes Streeting dropping the B word?
Well, I felt these were the opening salvos in a 5-month-long campaign which could tear the Labour Party asunder on a whole different range of areas. It's questioning policy, and we wait to see who's going to take over the crown from Keir Starmer. Rachel?
Yeah, you have to wonder why he's brought the B word into the heart of not only this Labour leadership crisis, but also into the heart of a by-election in a particular part of the country where it will only do damage and be a gift to reform. So it seems especially foolish unless his intention was to salt the earth.
Well, the campaigning has already started in Makerfield. Mr Streeting's prospective rival for leadership, Andy Burnham, has been out campaigning, where he's hoping to make his return to Parliament. Lucy McDade reports.
I did do a protest vote, but now that you're back on board...
Oh, really? Right.
Yeah,
that means everything. That's why I'm doing it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm trying to get this party back to where it solidly should have always been. Nice to see you again.
If he can win here, Andy Burnham could become Labour's saviour. The so-called King of the North has the backing of many in his party, even the deputy leader. But to return to Westminster, it's not them he needs.
Yeah, definitely happy to vote for Andy Burnham. I think he's... My worry is, though, that reform are pretty strong around here. That's the thing. With the council elections recently, there's a lot of reform. So, a bit worried, but, you know, he's got our vote.
You're going to be voting for someone who's not going to be here, who's got bigger issues than actually Makefield, really. So it won't be his priority. And that's what people are... I think that's what people are thinking, certainly what I'm thinking.
Andy Burnham seemed to be a fantastic candidate and we really hope he wins.
Okay, thanks very much.
Well, the Greater Manchester Mayor will hope his popularity counts in a contest that will be fought hard by Reform UK, also out on the doorsteps in Makerfield today. If Burnham wins, the next step for him could be Labour leader, and fellow contender Wes Streeting set out part of his stall this weekend, a pitch to rejoin the EU, one that will divide some in a party stuck on its direction.
I just think it's a bit odd, if I'm honest, because essentially if rejoining the EU is the answer to what we were just told loud and clear by the country, and, you know, parts of the country like mine, where 25 out of 25, we lost 25 out of 25 wards, 24 of them to reform. If rejoining the EU is the answer, then essentially what we're saying to people is life was fine in 2015, we just need to go back there.
It leaves the Remain backing Burnham with a Brexit dilemma, running for a seat that largely voted Leave.
I voted Leave when we had that vote, so for now, yeah, I would definitely stay out of it.
I think it was the worst decision we ever made. I think we can see the results of what happened. So for me, if they just put us back in, I'd be happy with that.
It was a massive mistake for the whole of the United Kingdom, and people don't seem to realise what a massive error it was.
So instead, he's been talking about renationalisation, while his political opponents say he's all talk and no plans.
He's only popular because he hasn't had to do anything. Politics is about making difficult decisions. As soon as he comes in and realises there's no money to throw about, he's going to become unpopular. Andy Burnham is talking about, increasing borrowing. That's going to hit everybody's mortgages. That's going to hit borrowing costs for this country. It's going to put billions on debt interest. We will be paying a Burnham premium. I do not think that that's going to make him popular at all.
While there is no official challenge to Keir Starmer, the competition is clearly beginning. And inside number 10 is a Prime Minister weighing up his options, weakened by ministerial resignations and the growing number of backbenchers who are calling for him to quit. Tomorrow, though, Keir Starmer knows he has to wake up, block out the noise and carry on with the job. But a lot of attention over the next month won't be on Westminster, but the North West, ahead of an election seen as paramount to Labour's survival. Lucy McDade, Sky News.
But what's the economic case for reversing the decision that Britain narrowly took in 2016? Our business correspondent, Paul Kelso, has been looking at the numbers behind Brexit.
I did do a protest vote, but now that you're back on board...
Oh, really? Right,
yeah,
that means everything. That's why I'm doing it.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get this party back to where it solidly should have always been. Nice to see you again.
If he can win here, Andy Burnham could become Labour's saviour. The so-called King of the North has the backing of many in his party, even the deputy leader. But to return to Westminster, it's not them he needs.
Yeah, definitely happy.
Wes Streeting says the UK should rejoin the European Union, that Brexit's been a catastrophic mistake and rejoining will rebuild our economy and trade. It's a political pitch based on an economic assumption that things can only get better if we rejoin. But absent a time machine, it might not be that straightforward. First question, have things got worse? The answer by most economic consensus is yes. Since the Brexit vote, there have been various independent assessments, all of them showing a negative impact on GDP. The OBR said that productivity would decline by 4% by 2035. The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development said GDP would decline 5% by 2030. And the US National Bureau of Economic Research by 6 to 8% by last year. How do things actually look today? Well, relatively good if you only look at the most recent data. GDP for the first quarter of this year makes the UK the fastest growing economy in the G7. Some Brexiteers have claimed this as proof that the doom-mongering was, well, just that. Now, take the timeline back a little, though, to pre-pandemic, and you see UK GDP has underperformed the Eurozone. Now, disentangling Brexit from the massive economic shocks that followed the pandemic, the Ukraine war, now Iran, is hard. Would the UK have been immune had we still been in the EU? Well, no. But were we more exposed because we chose to make a fundamental change to our most important economic relationship just before these generational challenges hit? Well, yes. Now, the EU was and remains our largest single trading partner, 41% of exports last year. That share has declined a bit. Now, the US is our largest single country trading partner at 22%. Then comes China at 3%, and then scores of smaller relationships that make up the other third of trade. Now, one of the claimed benefits of Brexit was the freedom to do trade deals with these countries, and there have been some with Australia, New Zealand, and Japan, each worth less than 0.1% to GDP, though. And India, a little more than that. Now, every little helps, but none of those are game-changing. The great prize for leavers was a trade deal with the US, but that hasn't happened. And since Donald Trump's second term, barriers have gone up, not come down. Last year, Keir Starmer did do a narrow deal on beef, ethanol, steel, cars and pharmaceuticals, but it's not legally binding and it's subject to presidential whim. The Prime Minister does now want to move closer to the EU. The King's speech includes a bill to increase food and drink trade by removing checks and accepting EU standards. Now, immigration loomed large in the Brexit debate a decade ago with promises it would decline. This is what actually happened. EU migration, the red line here, did go down, but non-EU numbers soared. A huge wave of legal migration now in decline, but it's an even bigger political issue now than it was then. It's highly unlikely the EU would hand back the same favourable terms on which we left, and freedom of movement is likely to be negotiable. The success or failure of Brexit was always going to be about what governments chose to do with it, and the same is likely to apply to rejoining. Now, one final chart that might explain why Wes Streeting is raising the spectre of Europe now. Polling shows that nearly 60% of people think leaving was a mistake, though tellingly Andy Burnham is not supporting a return as he fights a by-election in a Leave voting seat. What appetite there is to reopen the Brexit debate in the country beyond the Labour leadership campaign, well, that's another question entirely.
So we're not going to discuss the pros and cons of Brexit. We had many years of that, didn't we? But what I'm interested to find out is why you think Wes Streeting brought it up now and just threw that Brexit bombshell from literally nowhere.
Two reasons. Number one, of course, is that Labour activists are very much pro-EU. It's something that they've very much been chomping at the bit for. You can look at the polling on this. They think that the great solution to Britain's growth problems is getting closer to the European Union. So that's the first point. Wes Streeting is campaigning for membership and he wants that. And the second point, of course, is that it's a difficult challenge for Andy Burnham. Now, he can probably profess he didn't want that to happen, but it remains the case that Andy Burnham has a two-stage plan to get to becoming Prime Minister. He has to first of all win in a Leave voting constituency and then pivot to back winning the Labour membership, which is much more pro-Remain. That is a very difficult challenge for him to do, and then, of course, face the country. And so that's why I think Wes Streeting was doing it, partly because it's the probably right thing in terms of party management, but also because there's a degree of cynicism about the challenge facing Burnham too.
Do you think he's done it to scupper Burnham's chances? Because in Makerfield, we know that they are a Leave voting area, and we know that Reform are saying they're going to throw everything they've got at Makerfield, and it gives them an easy weapon to use against Burnham, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, scuppering anything that they consider left-wing, which is basically anything that's, you know, from the soft left, further left, is pretty much how the Labour right operates. So if that were, you know, it does fit in with their pattern of behaviour over many years. Scuppering the right seems to motivate them. But I think there's something else going on with Wes Streeting as well. I mean, I think you're right in terms of speaking to the membership, of course, but it also speaks to a vacuum in anything else. I mean, what else is he going to come up with? What policy is he going to come up with? What policy has the Labour right come up with for years? Nothing, zip, zilch. They've got nothing. So when he wants to fight a leadership campaign, what has he got to offer as a way of saying, OK, I have this as a potential leader, except for, you know, regurgitating this whole Brexit thing all over again?
There's a few problems with Wes Streeting, what he's offering. I mean, first of all, we've got to remember that the offer we had in 2016 is gone now. You know, if we were to rejoin the EU, we would accept Schengen, we would accept the euro, we would accept all the things we previously opted out of. The second point, of course, worth remembering is that when it comes to, you know, the European Union, what Labour previously promised was that we wouldn't rejoin, we wouldn't go into the single market. So there will therefore be more and more demands for Labour to seek a fresh mandate and for a general election, which is why I suspect Nigel Farage this week has been very, very quiet at the beginning of the week, because he knows that if calls grow for a general election, Reform is well placed to win that. So be careful. If you don't rip up the manifesto that you're on, I think that there'll be increasing demands and increasing sense that Streeting would need to seek his own mandate.
Yeah, and that's something that Kemi Badenoch said this morning on the Trevor Phillips show, that they'll need to call an election if you change your mandate and the person that's bringing your manifesto forth.
Yeah, I mean, we would argue that about the Conservatives, and we did argue about the Conservatives. I remember making that point. So I can't now say something different when it's Labour, right? I mean, we have to say the same thing for all. If you're drastically changing the mandate, you've changed your leader, then you do need to take it back.
And I would also make the point that Nick Thomas-Symonds, who's been doing EU negotiations for 2 years, is a very serious guy, who's worked really hard on this. He secured very little, because why would the Europeans want to give us great concessions when Nigel Farage is best placed to take over the next government? They're thinking, hang on a sec, why on earth should we give you some more great offer, work seriously with you guys, offer you anything, because Farage will rip it up in 3 years' time.
But are we predicting far too much by, you know, asserting that Nigel Farage is going to run the next government?
But, I mean, in terms of European thinking, from their perspective, the European capitals, they've been messed around by us for 10 years. Why on earth do they want to come back and say, oh, yes, you can come back in, guys? And then, of course, they might face the same dilemma 3 years down the line. So I just think that this is the great sort of mirage of the Labour right, which is, oh, you can get closer to Europe. Does Europe really want to get closer to us? I'm not sure they do.
But Keir Starmer has been working towards that, hasn't he? And as you say in the King's speech,
steps.
we had the, excuse me, the European Partnership Bill. But there are red lines in terms of the single market, the customs union and free movement. But there has been that move to move closer to Europe.
Here we are talking about all those things again.
Yes, it's all coming back.
Single market, customs union. No, I actually think that in many ways European countries do want to get closer to the UK, maybe not in terms of getting messed around on all these trade deals, etc., but in a diplomacy sense and in having, like, fortifying Europe at a time when Europe does need to be fortified because, you know, America is out of the picture in terms of being a reliable partner for anything. So I think, you know, in terms of diplomacy and geopolitics, it's probably useful for the EU, maybe not on other factors for the reasons that you've said.
But they are going to want to punish us just a little bit, aren't they? They're not going to make it easy.
I mean, you've got to remember that in war, the opponent has a vote.
I think so.
I think that, I mean, my view is, why would they want Britain to succeed and prove the ability that you can succeed outside the European Union? I agree with Rachel that there could be potential areas for cooperation on defence, potentially. But first of all, I mean, they've not exactly shown a sort of willingness to allow British firms to access some of those schemes. But second of all, is that going to really boost the growth industries? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about trade, right? I'm not sure necessarily there's going to be a great new deal if Wes Streeting does become Prime Minister. I think it's much more rhetorical than actually substantive. And I would be interested to see, when he gets grilled on his plans, what great ideas he has to get closer to the EU.
I'm going to guess very little.
Probably.
But he has put Burnham in quite a difficult position, because we know that he's saying long-term, perhaps rejoining the EU is something we should look at, but I'm not campaigning under that banner in Makerfield.
Yes, quite, because he can see which way the wind's blowing. And also, it just gets into a whole different area, different territory very quickly. He wants to talk about sort of Labour values and sort of standing up and Andy Burnham building on his brand. What he doesn't want, which is what you can see the two right-wing parties now doing, open borders, Burnham is one attack, and borrowing premium going up. The Burnham premium is what Kemi Badenoch was just talking about in that Trevor Phillips interview. So all the opponents are starting to attack him and define him right now. He's facing attacks from the left and the right, and it's all about killing his personal ratings. If he does win this by-election, he might lose the Labour leadership or potentially face a difficult challenge in the country.
Yeah, very, very high stakes. Let's move our attentions to an international story. The World Health Organization has declared a global health emergency over an Ebola outbreak in Central Africa. More than 80 deaths have been linked to the virus in the Democratic Republic of Congo. There are hundreds of cases there and in neighbouring Uganda. Adele Robinson has this report, and a warning, it does contain some flashing images.
The Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo is now at its highest international alert, declared a global health emergency by the World Health Organization. It's spread in cities and towns like Bunia.
This disease that has appeared in our community is causing great concern. Every day, people are dying in Rampara, and this has been happening for about a week. In a single day, we bury 2, 3, even more people.
Symptoms include fever, vomiting and bleeding. It spreads through sharing bodily fluids. More than 80 have died so far, over 200 more suspected cases.
Ebola was generated at the community level without going to health centres. People in the community said it was witchcraft. Now, when our teams are tracing cases, we realised that the first person fell ill in late April and died on April 24th in Bunia. It was the return of this body to the Mungwalu health zone that caused the Ebola outbreak to escalate.
The outbreaks now also crossed the border into Uganda, to its capital, Kampala, where at least 2 people who travelled from the DRC were confirmed to have Ebola.
When I heard them saying they had got one suspect of Ebola, well, it frightened me. It's not a simple disease. It's a deadly disease as well. So I should say, me as a Ugandan, I'm really frightened. I'm worried, I'm scared.
Are you scared of catching it, Adi? Are you scared of catching it?
No, I'm not scared. I'm dressing.
In 2014, Sky's special correspondent visited a UN Ebola centre in Liberia. It was one of the biggest outbreaks in West Africa. The strain this time is a less common one, the Bundibugyo virus, with no current approved vaccine.
Currently, I'm on panic mode because people are dying. I don't have medicines, I don't have vaccine to support. We have some candidate vaccine, some candidate medicine. We are pursuing this route. We hope that we can have something in the next coming weeks.
The disease is in urban areas, making the chance of wider transmission higher. The global health community is watching closely.
It might seem a really long way to be talking about this terrible situation that's impacting, devastating for these local communities, but we are you know, it's a global community and people travel, but these disease outbreaks can happen in many kinds of settings. So we always need to learn and understand and have capacity in the region so that we can respond and act on these outbreaks.
While the WHO says it currently does not meet the criteria of a pandemic emergency, the priority now is stopping the outbreak from spreading further across the region and beyond. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
And the extremely worrying thing about this particular strain of Ebola is that there are no vaccines, there are no drugs for cure, there's not even a certified way of testing for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to be very difficult because you think about the pressures that the World Health Organization has been under. The Trump administration has been incredibly sceptical of it. So you wonder what kind of multilateral action we have to kind of address this Ebola virus. You think about what happened 20 years ago. It's very concerning. And you do wonder exactly how much this is going to occupy world leaders' attention coming at a time when they're dealing with multiple crises in different theatres across the globe. Yeah,
not been designated as a pandemic as yet, but we're really in the initial stages.
Yeah, and it's spreading really fast. And, you know, I think the head of the CDC in Africa, the Centre for Disease Control, was saying that, you know, in terms of there being no vaccine or no medicine yet, which is absolutely terrifying for people who are in that region, horrendous. He was saying it's an equity issue because of the lack of facilities for rapidly developing and scaling production of both vaccine and medicines on the continent. So there's an equity issue there which may be delaying that process as well, which just adds to the fear and the concern.
Yeah, and he's also saying that, you know, when one country is affected, the whole world is at risk, particularly because of international travel and people getting on flights. So we might look at it and see, well, that's a problem over there, but it could very easily and very quickly be within our area.
Absolutely, as we've seen now with successive cases of these viruses, and most famously, of course, COVID and what happened there. And you do wonder, given how interconnected our world is, it may be over there for now, but how long before it comes over here? And are we really ready for that, given the different strains on elements of virus prevention in the NHS?
And Rachel, do you think that we are prepared for this Ebola outbreak? I mean, there have been outbreaks previously, particularly with the DRC. This is, I think, their 17th outbreak since Ebola was emerged in 1976. Do you think that we have learnt lessons from previous outbreaks?
No, I don't. I mean, thousands of people have been killed in DRC over the last few decades from this. And I think it's very telling, isn't it, that, you know, after COVID, you know, all these countries, including the UK, were saying, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, so next time it doesn't hit us as hard. And all the lessons from that, you know, all the things that we needed to improve, not least NHS and capacity, and the coordination between the NHS and local councils and test and trace and all the rest of it. None of that has actually happened. So I don't think we're in any better position now than we were before the pandemic to deal with.
One wonders if the US aid cuts as well have taken effect as well in the last 12, 15 months or so.
And the US pulling out of WHO as well, right? So this all contributes.
Yeah, very good points. Talking of the US, shall we go to the United States? Donald Trump has issued a fresh threat to Iran tonight. The US president posted this on his social media platform. For Iran, the clock is ticking and they better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence. Donald Trump is expected to meet his national security advisors on Tuesday to discuss the next steps of the war. Meanwhile, in the UAE, a drone has struck close to a nuclear power plant, starting a fire in a generator. The Gulf country's defence ministry says 2 of 3 drones were shot down, but the third came down at the Baraka plant in Abu Dhabi. No injuries were reported, and the UAE says radiation levels are normal. Well, these images of the plant were taken in 2020. No one has claimed responsibility for the drone strike, and the Emiratis are yet to blame anyone. But they have accused Iran of firing more drone and missile attacks in recent days. The UAE is investigating the source and says it has the right to respond to terrorist attacks. Your thoughts both are on this. We are allegedly in a ceasefire, yet we hear this bellicose post from the US president.
Yeah, because, I mean, we've heard these kind of comments from him before, intermittently, over the last few months, haven't we? And very threatening messages. I mean, you know, threatening an entire civilization, just horrific stuff. And I think the reality is that, you know, this was a war of choice. It was a huge mistake. Everyone can see it. It's been a disaster for everyone, most of all for, you know, Iranians and for people dragged into this US-Israel war, including Lebanon, including areas around the Gulf. He needs a way out, and he doesn't have the upper hand. Iran does. So that's the problem, isn't it? Because they obviously need to come to the table to negotiate some kind of deal. Iran is not willing to make the concessions that Trump thinks he can get out of them, and he doesn't know what to do next. And so we're in this sort of this turmoil with, you know, escalating threats every now and then coming from Trump. Meanwhile, nothing has changed materially.
Well, we know that he's spoken to Benjamin Netanyahu today, and reports suggest that the US and Israel are undergoing their most intense preparations for restarting the war. So it does look as though we are on the cusp of an escalation again.
Very possibly, because I think that Trump will find it difficult to do a negotiation, a deal with someone whose priors are so vastly different to his. You know, he doesn't have an enemy who he's negotiating with who has the constraints of a democratic mandate or need. He doesn't need to refer to the people. This is a theocratic regime, heavily embedded, heavily decentralised, and that means it has very different sort of incentives to respond to, and namely, it doesn't need to have a deal. So I think escalation may be something they're looking at. Obviously, Netanyahu will be very much in his ear, arguing a much more aggressive form. The other thing, of course, is the use of drones, which have taken over so many different spheres of conflict. And just last week, the Latvian Prime Minister was forced to resign as a result of the fallout of rogue drones going into her nation as a result from the Ukraine war. And I think drones are really changing all these different spheres, and that can be, I suppose, a good thing in one sense. It means you don't put boots on the ground, but it also means that we're now seeing all these kind of weird incidences occur where we don't know who's responsible for that. So I think that drone warfare is here to stay, and it's going to remake the globe.
Yes, indeed. And with Donald Trump, his reasons for going to war with Iran, we really don't know what they are still at this point. It'd be very difficult for him to convince the American population, who are very averse to war. He promised, you know, no more forever wars before coming into power. He's not bringing the American public with him, is he?
No, absolutely not. And he's not bringing his base with him either. I mean, the MAGA base is quite sharply divided over this, precisely for the reasons that you mentioned, you know, because he did promise no more war, and a lot of his base is pretty sort of isolationist in that regard. But he does have in his ear not just Benjamin Netanyahu from the Israeli Prime Minister, who's wanted to, you know, take on Iran for decades now, but also there's a neocon element to the MAGA base that is also in his ear that kind of, you know, has this thing of, well, we can reshape the Middle East constantly, and we can do this with Iran. Now is our chance. The regime is insecure internally. Let's take them on. Let's reshape the terrain. Absolute nonsense, and spectacularly backfired. And meanwhile, as you say, the cost is worse for people in the immediate line of fire, but obviously there are global consequences, and there are consequences in the US for people who might otherwise be drawn to Trump. So it's come at a huge political cost for him as well.
Yeah, we shall see how that proceeds, whether we are on the cusp of an escalation in the coming days. Let's take a break. Coming up next, we'll take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. The Labour leadership dominates again. The Financial Times says potential contender Andy Burnham is playing down rejoining the EU as Brexit wounds are reopened. The Telegraph has a similar story pointing out that Makerfield, where he'll fight the by-election, voted heavily in favour of Brexit 10 years ago. Andy Burnham's allies, meanwhile, warn he faces a perilous by-election race in Makerfield. That's in The Guardian. The Times claims those allies are also accusing West Streeting of trying to derail the Mayor's campaign for number 10 by reopening Labour's Brexit battles. The Express splashes claims from Reform UK leader Nigel Farage that Mr Burnham will betray Brexit voters. One of the architects of Brexit, Lord Gove, also says rejoining would be a betrayal. That's on the front of the Mail. The Eye reports that West Streeting will put rejoining the EU at the heart of his pitch to become the next PM, despite concerns from Labour's Red Wall MPs. The Metro carries predictions the leadership rumblings will put Britain into limbo throughout the summer. While the Star claims Andy Burnham would ban video assistant referees, VAR, if it were up to him. Slight difference there, story. Away from politics, the Mirror says the mum of missing Ben Needham has been told by police they've dropped the investigation into the disappearance of her toddler son after 35 years. And The Sun says England's footballers will take their own bedding to the World Cup to ensure a good night's sleep. So, yeah, yes, quite. There's always one paper that finds a different front page. That one is quite different. But let's start with The Guardian and their headline, Burnham facing perilous race in crunch by-election. I mean, there were some who previously commentated that it would be a shoo-in for Burnham because, you know, he's known as the King of the North. It's where he's from. He's well-known and well-liked there and has a positive rating. But there's quite a lot of jeopardy in the Makerfield by-election, isn't there, for him?
Certainly, and I think that talking to some Labour MPs, the suggestion was that Andy Burnham was struggling to find the right kind of seat, in that he was going to be a seat which he would hold at a by-election. Makerfield is the one that was available when Josh Simon triggered that resignation. And it is interesting because, obviously, 2024, Andy Burnham won here with about 60% across the 8 wards, but last week, Reform took 55%. How much does Andy Burnham put on the existing Labour poll rating? I've heard suggestions of about 15%, which would get it from the 25% last week up to 40%, 40 versus 55. I mean, I think it's going to be close, and I think that you'll see a whole deluge of activists go in. I suspect you'll probably hear a few Tories and even Reformers going, I'm going to vote for Burnham to get rid of Starmer. But it's very, very close, and I think that the next 5 weeks are going to be an absolutely crucial one in which you see all the opponents try to define Andy Burnham in a way which might stop him at this election, but if not, will certainly hurt his chances for the next 3 months after that.
Yeah, he's gambling an awful lot, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. One of his allies in The Guardian is saying it's impossible to underscore how perilous this is. I would give Andy a 45% chance of winning. And he points out that, you could say to progressive voters, vote for Burnham, but equally Reform could say to their vote base, vote for us to get rid of Labour once and for all, to put the boot in once and for all, and that would have quite a lot of appeal as a sort of protest vote. But I think this isn't to, try and put a rosy shine on this, but it's probably better for Burnham for this to be hard, right? If this were a shoo-in, I don't think he would have that much credibility. It would just look like, oh, he's gone for this easy seat so he could just win and swan his way off to being, to stand for Labour leadership. Whereas, you know, if it's something that he actually has to fight for and he has to win on its own terms, on the constituency's own terms, then I think that's probably going to be better for him. So, yes, it's risky. All of this is risky. But if he wins it, it's going to put him in a better position, potentially.
I think this shows power isn't just handed to you, you have to seize it. And he is going to go out and have to fight. This is
have
the
to
fight
win
of his
it,
life.
surely.
Precisely, but there's all this talk.
Seize it.
Well,
it's a democracy, after all.
Seize it in the democratic way, of course, you know, but you have to be proactive in it. And this idea is that somehow, oh, yes, they were going to have someone like a John Healey come to the fore, etc. You know, you can't just wait for things to come your way. Wes Streeting has resigned. He's very much going about it. Angela Rayner has been out there briefing proactively about her tax affairs. Andy Burnham is now proactively said he's going to stand in a risky seat, which is definitely not guaranteed. He's taking a gamble. People respect that. You have to go and fight for it. And those who think it's just going to somehow accrue to them, I think, are often disappointed in politics.
And if he does win, huge kudos, because he'll then be seen as the reform slayer, won't he?
Yeah, of course. But if he loses, you know, then they will be existential for the Labour Party. They'll have the most popular politician, the only politician, I believe, who's got positive approval ratings in the Labour Party, and he couldn't win here in a safe Labour seat that's always been traditionally very Labour. And they won, of course, just 2 years ago with a big majority. That will be really difficult. But this is the gamble, and we wait to see how it's going to go down. Could come to motivated turnout. And, of course, if he does win, we then have another big election, which is the Greater Manchester mayoralty, which Reform currently look like they're going to win.
Yes, I mean, it's not traditionally a Labour seat anymore, though, is it? Yeah. Because of Reform doing so well in the council elections. So the whole dynamics have changed of that area. Let's take a look at the Telegraph. Burnham retreats on push to rejoin the EU. Now, this is the Brexit bombshell that Wes Streeting has thrown into the mix, knowing full well that Makerfield was a Leave voting area. So is he trying to derail Andy Burnham's chances? Although he has publicly said he wants the field wildly open for all the best players.
I mean, I can't see into Wes Streeting's heart, but I do know how the Labour right operates, and this is exactly how they operate. Scupper the left, purge them, get rid of them, do them down. They will do everything in their power. This is what motivates the right of the Labour Party, is to do in the left. So I absolutely... No, it's true.
You make them sound like two distinct parties.
Well, they might as well be at this stage. Although, you know, they've so diminished the left and purged so many people that, you know, they're very much in retreat in the Labour Party at the moment. But so absolutely, this would be in keeping with the way that the Labour right behaves when it comes to the left, and they do see, you know, anything left of them as radical left, because that's the way they configure things. But yes, this has been spectacularly unhelpful for Andrew Burnham, which is why he's retreating on this. And in this piece in the Telegraph, he's quoted as saying, you know, this isn't about national issues, actually. This is the local constituency, this is a by-election. We're going to be talking about issues that matter to the constituency, which I think, you know, is the smart move, not least because he's already got to wear the label of, but you're only here so that you can stand for leader, and then you're not going to be here at all. So for him to emphasise the local issues is, I think, going to play in this favour.
But it is difficult for him because he has in the past said that there is a possibility that we could rejoin the EU.
In his lifetime. Well, he's a young thing, isn't he?
But, I mean, that's his view. That's his overall view.
Yeah.
So he's in the same camp as Wes Streeting, really.
Yeah, I mean, but it forces him on the defensive, I suppose, whereas Wes Streeting is very much going on the offensive, talking about it as something that should be very much looked at in the kind of medium term of the Labour Party, saying we should actively start to campaign rather than just in the course of my lifetime, I suppose. Look, I mean, it all depends on this kind of contrast thing, as Richard was saying, between local and national issues. And on the one hand, you can think maybe there'll be some who'd vote for him, you know, surreptitiously almost if he says that he's going to be the next Prime Minister. On the other, if it is defined by local issues, there'll be some people in Wigan who don't actually like the fact that what he's done in office, you know, for instance, such as the Clean Air Zone, which potentially you could see echoes of the Uxbridge by-election in 2023 when the Tories held that seat with the ULEZ issue, campaigning very hard on this. It'll all come out in terms of the defining which issue is going to define it. And I'll be be fascinated to see when the first constituency poll drops. That could prove a big, big impact. We saw that in Caerphilly. We saw it to a lesser extent in Gorton and Denton. If it is going to be a sort of two-horse race, and if the Greens are going to put up any meaningful threat, it'll be interesting to see how that vote starts to corral behind one candidate or another.
Rachel, what are your thoughts on the electorate in Makerfield believing that, you know, perhaps they shouldn't vote for Andy Burnham because he's going to take off and try and be Prime Minister and not really pay attention to local issues?
Yeah, but I mean, that's fair enough, isn't it, for a local constituency that's basically being used as a prequel to the general election, essentially, and that's certainly how it's being played in the media and by a lot of the political class. So I think if you're in Makerfield, that's a reasonable thing to wonder about. And Andy Burnham is going to have to prove that that's not the case, that even if he were to go for the Labour leadership, that that would not be the case. You know, he has got credibility to prove there, and I think that's going to be up to him and how he runs his campaign.
And Tuesday is when Reform are going to announce their candidate. Thursday is when Andy Burnham will potentially be signed off by his local constituency party. We then see, once he's been confirmed by his party, how is he going to handle the question he's going to get on every doorstep, which is, you're only running to replace Keir Starmer. Is he going to go, yeah, I am, and I've got the approval of the CLP to do so, or is he going to try and fudge it? And so I think it's going to be a proper sprint race. You've got 5 weeks to go, Thursday, the 18th of June. And right now I'm hearing quite sort of bearish noises from both the Labour camps and the Reform camps about which one's going to win it.
But it also depends. I mean, we're sort of assuming, you know, if you went onto a doorstep and someone said, you're only here to replace Keir Starmer, that might not be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like for some voters, it might be, yeah, go on, take him out.
But again, the hits
He's awful. So we don't know that.
The hits he takes in this by-election campaign may come back to haunt him in the leadership campaign, and thereafter might come back to haunt him once again if he becomes Prime Minister. So there's different levels he's operating on here.
That could work in his favour. Like all of you, what you just said, the absolute reverse could be true, right? We just don't know. We're both speculating.
Yeah, and highly unpredictable local by-elections, aren't they? Really unpredictable. We just cannot tell. But we know that he's very popular in the area, you know, the King of the North. He wears that title proudly. He's done very good things. He's spoken of bringing Manchesterism to
and voters
Westminster.
Voters want a man of action, and he's seen as a man of action. And that's why he's one of the very few politicians, the only politician, I think, who has positive approval ratings. Whether he can do that in Westminster will be a different challenge, but it'll certainly help him in this campaign.
The Times, Burnham's allies accuse streeting of sabotage. We've kind of covered that, but they've gone into a bit more detail. So his initial welcoming of other rivals to perhaps take on running for to be Prime Minister, although the race hasn't started as yet. It did seem that he was being quite sort of courteous. But in a reverse move, it seems that he could be trying to derail Andy Burnham.
There's a quote here from a senior government source who says, I despair, about West Streeting saying, you know, relitigating the whole Brexit thing. I despair. It's like a gift to Farage. What Wes did reeks of desperation and selfishness, which is kind of what we've been saying. I have not said obviously.
It's a leadership campaign.
I couldn't possibly comment.
With the opening salvos, this could potentially be a long and bloody campaign, much like the Tories had in 2022 when it was Liz Truss v Rishi Sunak. So
it is pretty desperate, though, to reopen the Brexit wars. That is desperate and just like...
Well, look, Wes has got to go big or go home. He's got a very difficult challenge to win over the Labour Party, a party that's never particularly warmed to him. I think he's got many, many talents, but we'll wait to see if he's going to be able to overturn his standing in the party to win this campaign.
Yeah,
he's a good campaigner.
The membership really doesn't like him. You say he's a good campaigner. He nearly lost his own seat.
Oh, but he did good results in Redbridge last week. In Redbridge last week, he performed pretty well. Last week, he performed pretty well against the odds.
Come on.
No leadership contest officially as yet, but the Mirror looking at whether Keir Starmer himself will decide to fight for his job. What do you think the likelihood of that is, James?
Well, I think that he has more in common with Boris Johnson than either man would care to admit, and I think he'll probably keep trying to fight on for himself, but, I mean, his odds seem incredibly slim. He just seems such a backseat passenger in all of this. The NEC, we understand, has approved Andy Burnham to stand, and the momentum just seems to be going out of the Starmer premiership. So I just don't think he's really master of his own destiny anymore.
Some of the papers suggesting that he's waiting to see if Andy Burnham wins the Makerfield seat, and if he does, then he will stand down. Do you think that's more likely?
I don't. I think he's just going to limp on. I don't think he's got the memo. right? I think he's someone who's just keeps thinking, no, it'll be okay. Just believe me this time. No, I will change. No, really, this time I will change. Like he's one of those types, and I just see him hanging on, even though, as we can see, you know, the power and authority has completely drained from the man. There's just none left. There's nothing left. But he himself doesn't seem able to see it.
And the other thing, of course, is potentially the ego, which all politicians have, which is that he is probably about to become the shortest-serving Labour Prime Minister ever in history. Less than 2 years, of course. And so does he want to maybe say, look, Andy, give me 6 more months, let me achieve a bit more, let me get this 18 billion through in defence. So there could be sort of some choreography over the timetable.
But why would Andy say, sure, mate? Why would he?
Well, potentially to avoid drawing more blood and doing it for the party they both proclaim to love.
But this isn't about the party. This is about the country, isn't it? It's about stopping reform getting in, whatever that means, whatever that takes. If that means shafting Keir when you're Andy, then so be it.
But understandably, Team Keir don't want that. So some kind of negotiation.
We shall see. There might be background negotiations going on now. For
It
all
may
we
well
know.
be.
We're going to take a break. The sport is coming up, and England's Red Roses beat France to claim an 8th consecutive Women's Six Nations title.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
These slums, once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped.
Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
We're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay.
Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons, firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate. An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
Well, hello and thank you for watching.
Tonight on The Wrap.
We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why. He did know what he was doing.
Both agree on that, can we?
No. You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable?
What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
But I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Time now to catch up with all of the sports news. And Paul.
Our new offers are coming through the summer. Came down like last night, done the medical this morning, and delighted.
Eventually, when I did sign him, we had to pay a little bit more money for him, like from 4 million to 12 million, but he was worth every single penny of it.
Aston Villa were ploughing a lot of money into a team to try and get them into the Champions League and try and compete in the top four. We had a great core of like really good individual players, and we felt like we were equipped to go and challenge.
He was a leader straight away. He was a big voice in the dressing room.
They wanted me, and the hierarchy at Newcastle weren't too convinced in terms of their confidence about giving me a new contract. Kevin Keegan, I think the manager at the time, he was a fantastic player. I was loving my football in front of him and playing well. But you know, the people upstairs had other ideas at the moment, and that was the way it went.
Even a hailstorm couldn't prevent James Milner from practicing free kicks.
He was always questioning players if they haven't put the effort on training. He always believed that you have to train the way you play.
It was like having another coach on the pitch. That's the difference in a player like that. Players who see things, who understand things, but also can give that detail out on the pitch.
Milner! Another stunning strike!
I had a captain at the same time called Gareth Barry, and Gareth was quite quiet but led by example, and James was alongside that.
We're pretty similar characters. Where we probably differ is away from the training ground. He's not got a switch. You won't mind me saying this, I don't think he switches off as much as I did.
He's quite intense in terms of information. He'll be talking to people about if he's playing right wing and he wants to know what the right back's doing.
He's a student of the game and goes away and studies it. How does he get better? Body positions, defending.
His demand on the pitch and off the pitch was really high. We were all having a meeting upstairs in the quarantine. Everybody just taking their coffees, teas. Rather than the manager, James Milner stand up. He gave us a lecture about how bad we are at training. We were all like, wow.
If we can keep improving, hopefully at some point we can crack that top four.
It's Milner! How about that? A laser-guided finish from James Milner.
Massively underrated. I think a lot of people think of him from a fitness point of view and the fittest player in the Premier League and the man who beats the fitness tests every summer, but it's so much more than that. Technically so good.
He would have, they used to say way back in my day, lived right.
Our pre-season used to be wild, and one of the days we had a day off, so we all went out, we had a couple of drinks. Obviously Matt O'Neill found out that we broke the curfew, and the next day we had to train, and James Milner, because he never came out with us. He was in front of all the runs. He was taking people on. He was shouting. He was aggressive, just to show that, you know what, guys? If you go out, if you enjoy yourself, make sure you're ready.
We went to Chicago on a golfing trip. Probably be around about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning when the nights would stop. And bearing in mind we're getting back up at 6 or 7 o'clock to play golf. He'd go for a run at 1 o'clock in the morning because that's when he could fit it in. And I'm thinking, oh, that's where we differed.
We used to do urine samples every morning just to see if you're hydrated, but James took it.
Let's see what's happening with the weather now for you.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the week will start rather cool and changeable, but there'll be an improvement during the week as we pick up a more southerly flow, which will bring milder nights and warmer days. By next weekend, conditions look more settled as well. Overnight, showers will continue, largely over western parts of the UK mainland. Eastern counties will be mostly dry, while Scotland and Northern Ireland will turn cold under clearing skies with the risk of frost and patchy fog by morning. Through Monday, showers will spread eastward, merging together to give some longer spells of rain at times. Early sunshine over Ireland will disappear from the southwest as cloud thickens, bringing rain by the middle of the day. Temperatures will reach the low to mid-teens for most. Cloud, rain and freshening winds will spread into Wales and the southwest by early evening. Elsewhere, there'll be some good sunny spells interspersed with showers.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Coming up, no official Labour leadership race, but rivals have still reopened old divisions over Brexit.